Okay, everyone. We'd like to get started right on time. Thank you so much for everyone for attending today and our participants in the Redesigning Higher Ed webinar, How Centers for Teaching and Learning Can Drive Transformative Learning. And this is hosted by Qedex by Caspier and the University of Central Oklahoma. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Over their quick bios. We have Dr. Eric Kyle, and he serves as the director of the 21st Century Pedagogy Institute at the University of Central Oklahoma. He has been involved in education since 2001 and has focused on faculty development since 2011. His work centers on evidence-based teaching practices, peace education, and instruction in religion and spirituality. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Eric Kyle. We'd also like to welcome Dr. Jorg Walche. He is the Dean of Learning Resources and Libraries at Macomb Community College. He's previously served as the founding executive director of the Center for Faculty Excellence at Texas Women's University and led the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the United Arab Emirates University. Before moving into administration, he was a tenured associate professor at Ohio University. Jorg holds a PhD in comparative literature, an MBA, and degrees from universities in Germany and the US. He also has extensive experience in faculty development, instructional technology, and curriculum design. He is a principal fellow of the Higher Education Academy and graduate of the UC Berkeley Executive Leadership Academy. So welcome to Jorg. And we also have Dr. Mark Wolvord. He is the Assistant Director of Center for Excellence in Transformative Teaching and Learning at the University of Central Oklahoma. He trains faculty in their Student Transformative Learning Record, which they call Stellar, framework, and serves as a co-coordinator of the Campus Sustainability Center. And this is me, Brian Zerlin. I'm Director of Consultants of Qedex by Caspier. My career spans over a decade, during which I've consistently helped organizations enhance efficiency and performance. I've also spent 8 years in software sales with Live Text Inc., which is now Watermark, and Portfolium, which is now Instructure, where I work closely with universities and colleges to streamline accreditation and assessment management. I hold a Master of Arts in Teaching from Aurora University. And finally, we'd like to welcome Stuart Blacklock, CEO of Caspier. Stuart is the driving force behind Qedex by Caspier. He's worked in higher education since 2011 and worked throughout the world learning different education systems and their accreditation processes. Stuart's work has covered North America, South America, Europe, MENA, India, and Indonesia. Stuart's vision of affordable, equitable, and accessible professional development led to the creation of Qedex, which in turn led to the realization that transformative learning can play a vital role in helping institutions stay relevant for the 21st century. So once again, we'd like to thank all of our participants today in the webinar. And just a little bit of housekeeping here too, just as we move through the actual webinar. There is a message or a Q&A feature, so feel free to ask a question at any time. We're going to set aside some time at the end of the webinar to answer all of those questions. Any questions that don't get answered will certainly be responded to via email, and they'll be in the email along with the webinar, which is recorded. So this link will be emailed with those remaining questions answered. So don't hesitate to ask those questions, and we certainly will get to them. And with that said, we'd like to start with Dr. Eric Kyle.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad that you're able to join us. So we're going to be talking a lot about transformative learning, transformative education, and kind of what that looks like as we think about our institutions, think about our work, maybe as faculty members, maybe as those who work with faculty members. But before we can kind of dive into that, we have to have a little bit of foundational knowledge in terms of what is transformative learning. And it's a pretty major question because the field of transformative learning is actually quite young compared to other disciplines. It's only been around really since the late 1970s with the work of Jack Mesereau. And the field has continued to expand and grow beyond how Mesereau kind of formulated and thought about transformative learning. So it's really a new, evolving, innovative field. So what I'm going to talk about is just kind of where the field is at currently. And there's really two aspects to transformative learning that we want to talk about. The first is kind of transformative learning as a content in terms of like what is being transformed when we talk about transformative transformation. And then the second one are the processes of transformation that kind of help support those changes and those transformations. So that first part in this diagram, you'll see it's kind of those first two blocks. Kind of our students come with different ways of knowing and experiencing the world. They come with their own cultural backgrounds and all of that. They come from these social aspects of learning, these contexts that they live in and thrive in and grow in, and their families, their workplaces, and their neighborhoods, all of those types of things. And it's through those different ways of knowing that they kind of form and have shaped different parts of their being. So you can think of Jack Mesro talked about frames of reference or worldviews or meaning-making perspectives. That's kind of a cognitive part. But we also know that transformation and the field of transformative learning has kind of expanded beyond that to include also, say, students' identities, their values, their lifestyles. And so when I talk with faculty about transformation and what transform, I like to distinguish between kind of learning and transformative learning. So I have faculty think about learning as being those specific knowledges and skills that students are learning in their class, whereas transformative learning is a little bit more at that macro level of a student's belief, their identities, their lifestyles, those types of things. So that's kind of the what of transformative learning, like the content of what's being transformed. The second part of this is the processes that we can engage our students with to help support those transformations, right? We never want to kind of force transformation. In fact, there's research that shows that you really can't do that. It won't be sustained. But we certainly can create environments and activities and strategies and support systems that help kind of support students as they go through these transformative learning processes. And that center set of blocks there in the dotted line blocks is kind of how the field has been thinking about processes of transformative learning. Disorienting dilemmas is kind of a term that's used pretty uniquely within transformative learning. And it's basically these experiences that students have that have them take kind of pause and step back and go, oh, wait, something is different here than what I expected. In educational psychology, they might call that cognitive dissonance, or kind of what students were expecting or how they're thinking about things might be a misconception or something different from what the class is kind of having them engage with it. And so they may have this kind of disorienting dilemma where they're like, wait, I'm not sure what I think anymore. I thought I knew, but now I don't know. But really, it's these experiences that we engage our students with through which transformation can happen. And then in that second kind of block, we can have students step back and critically reflect on those experiences and those disorienting dilemmas. Yes, it includes critical thinking skills, but there's also something unique to transformative learning that's called critical self-reflection, where students aren't just kind of critically thinking about the knowledge and skills that they're learning or the experiences that they're having. They're also stepping back and thinking about themselves in relationship to the knowledge and skills, to those experiences. And that's kind of where the shifts in beliefs and values, identities, lifestyles, that's where that's kind of starts to happen a little bit more deeply and a little bit more holistically for them as they kind of reflect on the implications, the meaning, the value of what they're learning and experience for their life, for their relationships, for their workplaces, for their communities that they're a part of. And then, of course, that last block there is kind of acting engagement. Like we can have students kind of have shifts in these different beliefs and values, but they then need to act on those. Otherwise, it doesn't kind of become a part of who they are. And so that's kind of closes this loop, which then through that acting, they get feedback, they get reinforcement, whether it's kind of supporting what they thought or maybe it's challenging some, and maybe there's more disorienting dilemmas. So it kind of is this, what they call a praxis cycle of transformation. And then that kind of leads to those types and characteristics of transformation. And kind of as I mentioned, alluded to at the beginning, we can't forget about the social aspects of learning, that all of this happens within a student's, the context of students' relationships, their cultural backgrounds, as well as their peers, their relationships they have at work, at home, and in the community. So that's kind of the what of transformative learning. So as we kind of shift to the next slide here, we're going to talk just briefly about the why of transformative learning. Why is transformative learning important at this point in time? We know here we're at the University of Central Oklahoma. There's a big movement across our state right now to talk about workforce development, which is an interesting conversation because a lot of this kind of talk as it's coming out of some of our political organizations is really focusing on that knowledge and skills. Like we have to make sure that our students have the technical competencies that they need to go into the workplace to be productive and efficient and effective, which is all wonderful. And of course, we support that. However, transformative learning has that, but also a more holistic view of students as we prepare them for the workforce. In fact, one of the things that when we talk to faculty about this, is we draw from some of the surveys that have been done with employers, and we're talking literally thousands of employers across the U.S. who have said repeatedly across these surveys that technical skills is important, but actually, if you look at the top 10 things that employers want, sometimes those technical skills don't even make it in the top 5. Actually, what's more important for these employers is a student or an employee's abilities to work in teams, to be able to think creatively, to be able to work across diversity, to be able to solve problems, to be able to manage projects. It's all these other kind of more holistic things. And of course, we know, and transformative learning has been pretty strong about supporting this notion that we aren't just interested in preparing students just for their professional life, but also for their personal and their civic lives, that we want them to be able to engage with their families and relationships in ways that are healthy. We want them to be active, engaged citizens in their local communities at the state, national, even international level. And so transformative learning kind of has, at least as we conceive of it, kind of has that as a part of its goals and outcomes. And so transformative learning kind of supports these different types of transformation. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our next presenter.
Thanks, Dr. Kyle. With that background and foundation on transformative learning, I wanted to talk about what that looked like at our campus, University of Central Oklahoma, UCO, as we kind of bought into this and wanted to begin to focus more holistically on students and their development, not just for those skills, like Dr. Kyle said, but for those worldviews, attitudes, and perspectives that employers wanted and that we believe our world needs. So there was a lot of background. I wanted to show you the process, the long process, because we want to be able to contribute to you and your campus and your organizations doing the same sort of work. There were years of discussions going on at the grassroots level and with administration that eventually led to, in 2006, transformative learning finding its way into our mission for our campus. And then there were other pieces that began to tie in and support that in the mission. Our first transformative learning conference that kicked off in 2008, these core areas, these tenets that we decided we wanted to focus on where students could have transformative growth. A building, our Center for Transformative Learning, opened in 2010. And then as the timeline continues, we see that in 2012, our Faculty Development Office launched. That's our Center for Excellence in Transformative Teaching and Learning, KETL we call it. Brian, if you could advance to the next slide. And then in 2014, we were lucky enough to take that foundation and that background to apply for federal monies to help us launch and accelerate what we were already doing. And that was to build our student transformative learning record, Stellar, which launched in 2015 as a way to measure and record students' transformative growth across our campus. By 2020, we were off that federal funding. It had become institutionalized, and we were excited to start contributing to other campuses and other faculty development, doing the same sort of work, just like our partnership with Qedex happened in 2022 that you'll hear more about next. So what did that look like in our mission? Although it's changed wording a couple times, you can look it up on our website. You can see there that it lists our commitment to transformative learning experiences. And as you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see that where we're focused on those transformative learning experiences for students is not just in their discipline, in their major, in their minor, but also across these other 5 important tenets and core areas: global cultural competency, health and wellness, leadership, research, creative, scholarly activities, and service learning and civic engagement. So that gave us this framework through which we could organize our assessments, our evaluations, through self-assessment, through students, seeing if we were meeting our mission to students by the work that we do with them in and out of the classroom. So the lessons learned through that I wanted to pass along to you, I'll highlight here. For us anyway, and I'd encourage you to examine your own organizations, institutions, or departments to see where this could work. We found the top-down plus grassroots approach very important. So we had faculty, staff, and students from across campus, and we had vice president and presidential provost support, all coming to this at the same time because of all those conversations. So it was cross-cutting input across different roles and people at our organization. It was also really important for us to identify early adopters, people that were really excited about changing their classroom and the activities they offer students. and we used them to highlight and promote the work that we were doing to get other people on campus excited. Also, you have to have content, you have to have the knowledge for the faculty and staff to know how to transform their work with students. And so training was very important. Very early on, we set up with IT, with faculty and staff across campus, training opportunities. We did actually 2 3-hour blocks, 6 hours of training that we invited faculty and staff to at the time. That was together, cross-departmental, faculty and staff together from different departments doing that training so that it broke down silos across campus. We also were very clear about communicating incentives, whether we were able to provide stipends or micro-credentials and badges for the faculty and staff that went through it. And an important part of this was organizing reflection, having a place in Kettle, in our Center for Excellence in Transformative Teaching and Learning, online, asynchronously and synchronously, to have places where the faculty and staff could continue critically reflecting on their own view of education and how they're impacting and seeing students holistically. And then embedding a way to assess how successful the program was and if students were in fact growing. Those were the big 5 points that really we found to be successful in integrating transformative learning campus-wide. And I'll end this little section with a quote from one of our professors who had been here a long time and seen this whole process, who really points out how much she appreciates the emphasis that this campus where she worked had both on disciplinary and beyond disciplinary, that is transformative skills that students would need to succeed after they graduated. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jorg.
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Eric, and hello, everybody. I just wanted to tell you a little bit of how it looks on the other side. If you're not deeply involved but are just starting out, I was the director of the Center for Faculty Excellence at the time at Texas Women's University, and UCO was not that far away from us. On my campus, I knew faculty was very interested in trying out something new, trying to find out how can we piece things together. It seemed that even for interested faculty, they were done learning new tricks and they wanted something that ties it together and opens up new horizons and involves students more. And we had at the time what was called, and you see them on the picture here, a handful of people. That's where it all started, a grassroots movement. And they were interested, they formed the so-called Authentic Assessment Collective. And we got wind of the UCO Transformative Learning Conference and went up there, and people were excited. They not only found something to get into themselves, but they made connections to people from other campuses. And so when they came back, they, of course, clamored for more, and they tried to talk to other people, and our CFE began to support an ever-growing group of faculty interested in providing more of this kind of holistic, transformative learning experience, and who were also eager to develop more authentic assessment techniques, and that's what the Transformative Learning program that was started a little later than actually supplied. I'm jumping ahead a little. So our center, after this grassroots movement grew, was able to provide funding for other people to go to the conference in following years. And then basically, and we can go to the next slide here, I would say. As we noticed that interest grew at Texas Women's University into this kind of program, we invited faculty to sign up for the Transformative Educator program that was offered by Qedex. And we may not have been the very first ones to be in the program, but we were one of the first, right? So I take pride in saying we were the first ones who participated with a lot of success. We had 26 faculty members from all our 3 campuses enrolled in the first round. And not only did they start to connect within or across the boundaries of our 3 campuses, but they reached out to like-minded faculty. And I think that's really important. Faculty mindset is very, very important. I think that people kind of have an incentive to go on add more skills to their, how shall we call it, to their toolbox. Yeah. And so it worked out very well. It was not just, oh, there's a video, watch this. We created a cohort, a group. People got to talk and exchange ideas through the program with people across the United States, I guess, and even some people who lived abroad. And so success all around, I thought. And yeah, we were pleasantly surprised. Eric and Mark, you think, oh, that is so convoluted and how can we pull this off? But I think if you look at our experience, slowly, right? You have a few people and then they say, hey, that's great. And they coax other people to join. And suddenly you have a sizable group. And maybe let's look at the next slide. There you see, I don't know whether it's all 26, but a picture of us coming back, people being celebrated. We have something on campus called the Celebration of Excellence for people who went the extra mile and got involved in more pedagogy and innovative teaching. So we were able to scale it across our campus, all our campuses at TWU. But I also must say that it's not just saying, here's this conference or sign up for this program. You need to kind of keep the ball rolling. So we also came up with tools and incentives for cross-departmental involvement. We had cohort luncheons, made sure that people kept connecting with each other. We had peer meetings where people with similar backgrounds sat together and say, hey, we learned this. How can we apply this? Bring it to our classroom. Showcases to get more people involved. So the people who did something said, this is how I'm using this in class. I mentioned that we went several times to the TL conference at UCO, and we had these celebrations of excellence that were attended by our presidents, our president, the provost, deans, and so on. So people saw it's worth overall to invest time into honing my teaching skills and being more involved in creating a more engaging environment. So in the end, I'd say our goal was to create a community of reflective practitioners, people who keep on pushing the limits, and this program came in very handy. Yeah, as I said, faculty mindset matters. And if you're looking for something where you say, hey, I find myself in the same environment, people do things here and there, but how can I pull it all together? That might just be the program for you. So I hand it over now to whoever is next. Mark is back, I think. Okay.
So, yeah, so as you think about faculty development and beginning to transform your own higher education and departmental culture to think of your students and learners more holistically, I wanted to give you a vision of what that turned into at UCO when we started with that transformative learning foundation, kind of like Jorg mentioned, getting more and more people excited, getting that grassroots effort. At our campus, that's what turned into Stellar, the Student Transformative Learning Record. Because faculty and staff wanted to work with students and help their holistic development, we then wanted a way to track that to see if we were meeting our mission of giving students transformative learning experiences across those central 6 tenets. So on our campus with the Stellar program, of course, like any other campus, we had the academic transcript already that was recording disciplinary knowledge on an A through F grading scale. So we developed a way to authentically assess students' growth, transformative growth across those other 5 tenets. We use a campus-wide rubric that we trained our faculty and staff on. They would collect student artifacts, written or video or verbal artifacts, and observations of those students to see if they saw evidence of them being exposed to, let's say, health and wellness values, or maybe they started to integrate some of the leadership skills and competencies, or maybe they saw that the student was completely transformed in their identity, worldview, and perspective in seeing themselves as a researcher in their field of study. That would be research, creative, scholarly activities. So the Stellar snapshot acted like a second transcript The Stellar Snapshot and the academic transcript together are a comprehensive learner record, a CLR, that the student can use to apply to graduate schools, scholarships, internships, jobs, and stand out to show that employer, that review committee, that they're well-rounded across these core tenet areas. So just to give you on the next slide one more view at how this might look like and what it turned into on our campus at UCO, faculty staff get trained, like I mentioned, the importance of training and organizing reflection and communities of practice. For us, they submit a form online saying, here's the activity, and I think it's going to give students growth in leadership and service learning. We review that at a central spot in our office and our faculty development office. And then once it's approved, that faculty or staff member looks for the student's impact, the growth of the student, and gives them stellar credit at the exposure, integration, or transformation level. From the student side of things, the lower half of this slide, the student may accidentally happen upon an activity or maybe have an assignment in a class, or they can seek them out by looking for the experiences across our campus, both virtually or face-to-face. They can participate and get automatic exposure level credit in one or more of those tenets on their snapshot, or perhaps they participate in the activity and then write or do some other sort of critical reflection that serves as the learning artifact, the evidence for the faculty or staff to authentically assess what level of growth they've seen, and then they give the student exposure, integration, or transformation level credit across those tenets. Either way, it shows up on that stellar snapshot, that second transcript that the student has access to. Not only allows the student to keep track of what they've done throughout their undergraduate or graduate career on our campus, but it also allows campus to see how well we're meeting our mission of offering transformative learning experiences to students. And what we've seen on the next slide are just a few of the results over the 10 years now that we've been doing this. And that is that we get between 70 and 80% participation in some sort of stellar activities. So students that are participating in these transformative learning opportunities that faculty and staff are offering, because those faculty and staff were trained in what transformative learning is and holistic student development. The results are that we see greater student retention. That graph at the bottom is first-time full-time freshmen coming back for their sophomore year, fall semester. We see significant increases in the students that are involved versus not, whether or not they're priority population students. And as we might expect, we have a lot of students that are getting exposure level credit. We're providing lots of opportunities for them to get exposed to these different areas. And we're seeing some evidence of integration and transformation where students are being transformed by these amazing experiences that faculty and staff have set up because they've been trained in this process. And so I want to give you another quote, this time from a student instead of a faculty. The students themselves, this one, a veteran, a military veteran, realizes that learning is more than just about the technical knowledge, more than just about the book knowledge. It helped give them a picture of what the world can be like and how they can contribute to it. That bigger social good, social justice picture came across for this student because of their involvement and critical reflection here on our campus. And with that, I want to turn it over to Stuart.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Again, thank you, Mark, Eric, Jorg, and Brian for joining us for this webinar. CASPER is a global organization. We were pulled together back in, I think, 2011, and since then we've been specializing in transformative learning. At the beginning of the pandemic, we created Qedex, which I'll be going and just showing you a few pages of that shortly, but we created Qedex just to basically support directors or centers of teaching and learning with their professional development as we went through lockdown. And since that, we basically created 40 online courses for staff, for leadership, and for faculty to go through and continue their professional development. It was in 2021 when we met Dr. Jeff King, who was at the time the director of Kettle at UCO, and he taught us all about transformative learning. And it really kind of resonated with us as an organization, and especially working around the world. We currently serve over 90 universities across the world in about 28 countries. So we we found that if we could move to the next slide, we found that a lot of the challenges that were facing universities and centers of teaching and learning could be addressed by looking at transformative learning as a way of improving the way we the way we teach, as well as the other kind of like challenges here which we've identified. These are global kind of areas, but you'll probably resonate with some of these as well. And really what this meant was that we decided to pivot and focus all of our energy into transformative learning and create a global community for transformative learning practitioners. And we found that, the key areas have to be that, as Eric has already mentioned, that bridging the gap between academia and industry is a key driver for universities. Enhancing the teaching effectiveness is one thing that also Jorg has gone through and touched about. Encouraging lifelong learning among educators it's important, and we need to reinvigorate our faculty members and adjuncts and get them kind of like trying new kind of strategies that can reinvent the wheel, if you like. But the other three areas here are very, really important. Student employability is the key driver. Providing them with critical thinking skills or critical self-reflection skills, active listening, teamwork, all of those leadership skills, that are really vital now for what the workforce is looking for in graduate students. But from your aspect, as a director of Center of Teaching and Learning, it has to be affordable. Budgets have been diminishing over the years now, and things are getting pretty tight. We realize that. So we wanted to make this a program which was affordable but also accessible. And by that, I mean that, the hours have changed of professional development. A lot of online learning now kind of occurs in the spare time or in the evenings of faculty. So we wanted to make this something that is available for all members of higher education, but also just make it something that fits within the budget and where you can start a small project and hopefully grow from there. We were so inspired by their work and their evidence over the last 10 to 15 years that we realized that this would be a great program to put together in partnership with UCO. And if we could move to the next slide. Basically, we developed the world's first transformative educator program. And it really just does address all of these key challenges, which is going to help a lot of universities and their graduates and give them a competitive advantage over the other universities and students. Next slide, please. So the program itself is a 8-week program, and the way it works is that we start with a 90-minute introduction webinar, and we get all of the participants from the USA, for example, and we combine it with theory, practice, and mentorship. So once the first course is opened, you have 2 weeks to go through the first course, and then we have another webinar for 90 minutes. We reflect, so you go through, take the program, the course. The course has 4 modules and 4 assessments as well. So it goes through this kind of like, what is transformative learning? How do we implement transformative learning? How do we assess it? And what do we do next? So these are the 4 key areas which we've built this program on. And at the end of each program is a conclusion, which is the webinar. And at the end of that, we also provide a certificate of completion on behalf of UCO and Caspia. Okay, so the platform is Qedex, QEDEX.org. It's free registration. You can jump in and go through there. And there's also a whole lot of information about where we do and where we kind of like focus our teaching of transformative learning. The course itself, I'll play a quick introduction by Dr. Jeff King, who was the kind of like the creator of the program with us.
At the end, kind of just pulling this all together in a sense. So with transformative learning, there's culture, there's structure, and there's support. So you kind of saw that as it kind of amalgamated throughout the presentation, kind of starting out with, Eric describing just what is TL, and then really getting into the student-centered aspect, as Mark was describing with the stellar record with those definitely those authentic experiences. But really, once again, we can't give the faculty involvement short shrift either. This really is a practice for faculty to really get involved as well. And that's why we're going to really looking at your faculty too, as Stuart already mentioned, perhaps getting some cohorts together to really start learning about TL and how they can implement that within their pedagogy, within their own instruction as well. And then finally to Qedex, just what we do as far as these different modalities of learning and how we kind of can get this information out there within your hands so you can actually use it within the classroom. Along with UCO, they're trailblazers here, they're pioneers. So really lean on them once again if you decide to join us, because I think they'd be great mentors throughout this entire process. So really excited for that as well. And Stuart, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So really, once again, it's great oaks form little acorns grow. So in a sense, that's how we look at this. Stuart and I have been in the assessment world for many years. And once again, it's something that really does have to happen at the grassroots. It has to have faculty buy-in, and that's what we're looking to do. And TL is really within that same vein. And we can really assist with, transforming those teaching skills, within this program itself. And it just takes like an initial cohort. You have to start somewhere. So if you are interested in learning more, as Stuart already mentioned, there is an October cohort. And we're really looking to get, as many institutions as we can, and to help work with us, work with Eric and Mark's team, obviously lean on Jorg as well. You can reach out to me, Brian Zerlin. So you see bzerlin@caspier.com. And once again, this will be shared, so it'll be quite easy for you to take a look. So now we're going to get into a few questions. So we've had some that have come through, which is wonderful. So certainly appreciate that. And I think this first one is for Mark. We had an attendee ask, I'm very much looking to see an example of authentic assessment. So I know you had that stellar record, Mark, so maybe you could kind of reach into your bag and kind of, share some examples of what some authentic assessments on campus are regarding stellar.
Sure. So the way we have it set up, it's decentralized because we're having faculty and staff come through training, and we very much hear the cry for academic freedom. We give the background and the examples and the information on how they could set up experiences to be more transformative in and outside the classroom. We give them a campus-wide rubric on what would complete transformation in leadership look like, what would integration look like, what would exposure look like, generically. And then when they submit their stellar tagging form saying, I have this activity that I want to give stellar credit for, and I think they're going to have growth in leadership, we have them use that basic rubric, but then make it specific to their assignment. What evidence would they be looking for in whatever the student is turning in, the learning artifact, the critical reflection, the assignment, the audio file, the video file. And then each of those faculty or staff members that's running the event, the assignment, the activity, is themselves looking for the evidence in what the student wrote or in what they observed the student doing during a service learning project or a research project, undergrad mentored research project, for instance. So we leave that authentic assessment piece to each faculty and staff member who's trained in transformative learning to know what to look for to see evidence of perspective, worldview, and identity shifts. And then in our office centrally, in our faculty development office, we do spot checks on those stellar credits that faculty and staff are giving to make sure they're calibrated across campus to that rubric to make sure they're doing authentic assessments.
And to kind of give you a concrete example of that, one of our political science faculty works with city managers from Oklahoma City as well as small towns around Oklahoma City, and has their students kind of work with those city managers on a very specific project. So they actually are getting real world experience, and it really is authentically assessing their ability to engage in leadership kinds of activities with these city managers and complete these kind of projects in the community that actually get carried out by many of these city managers.
Yeah, and if I could chime in, since we started out from the collective assignment well, what was it called? Committee, something like this. You know, that's I saw a few very good examples that are easy to implement. You know, it's not that convoluted. You can start out small. I think the big thing is is it applicable to students' real life? A lot of people are still stuck in this drill and kill, or I'm gonna test everything that's in this chapter or in this book. And I think students get more engaged when they have something that it's not just busy work. Like a writing example, instead of saying, write these essays for me, the professor, turn it into a little brochure, you know, collect these essays and say, we'll distribute them throughout the department. So there's a little journal or a portfolio assignment where people see how their knowledge or their subject matter interest grows over time. So it's something that they then can take on and show to a prospective employer, for example. And anything that's not just, oh, we have to do something, I'm doing this for you, the professor, but something that gives people the idea, I'm learning actual skills and I can share them with other people. So that's my 2 cents. The authentic assessment there saying, you're not doing this for me or just to gain a few points. There's something that you really can take with you wherever you're headed next. So
Great, thanks, Jorg, and thanks, Mark and Eric, for that. And Jorg, if you don't mind staying unmuted, because I do want to direct this next question at you. How did you go about identifying those key stakeholders to just start? You know, this is from the ground up. So how did you do it?
well, at the beginning, I don't know, they found each other. At the Center for Faculty Excellence, as it was called, we had people who came to workshops, and after a while, it kind of crystallizes who's interested in trying out new stuff. And I always say the important work, I mean, I can teach you tips and tricks in a seminar, but the important work really happens in the break or before we get started or afterwards when we just brainstorm and talk about stuff and say, how are you using this in class? So people found each other and then they talk to their colleagues. So once you get the ball rolling, it's a very natural process, I think. Yeah. And then when I realized, and I had a coordinator at the time who was also very much into this authentic assessment and reached out. And when I noticed, oh, there's something more to it than a little club, you know, that where people are just doing their little hobby horse, but there is, once we promote it and make people aware of it, we people develop more of an interest or say, hey, that's what I've been looking for. Yeah, promotion, getting the word out and saying, hey, here's some people, would you like to join them? Yeah. We lost a lot of this through the pandemic because we used to teach a lot of in person, right? And some people might say, well, if you don't meet in person, but you can create an environment even if they don't meet in person all the time. You could say, well, we can do something online, but we also once a month meet in person for those people who can make it or are in town or in the building. And so I think that's how it happened. It grew out of a core group, but then it's important to, when you realize there is an interest, to add a little, yeah, pizzazz. And it has to have a little, we had a nice, I call it the uh, mother of all Keurigs. Our center had a Keurig machine that was tied, and we offered free coffee, and people would just stop by and say hello, and or bring their laptop because they could work better. And so it was a very natural process, I think. And once you get started, and people noticed I'm not the only one. I found that often people sit in a silo and they think I'm the only one doing new stuff, and they have nobody to bounce ideas off. And so that's what a center for teaching excellence or whatever you call it on your campus can provide. Yeah, whether this is virtual or better yet in person. But I'm old school in that respect. So I stop right here unless you have more, you want to drill deeper. So
Yeah, I would love to
Great,
hear
thank you.
also Mark's responses as well. I know just in my own work with faculty here at UCO and elsewhere, the kind of a path that I'll see faculty go on is they'll kind of, as Jorg described, they'll start as a participant. And if they're really passionate, you'll see them at least I'll see them at multiple kind of programs semester after semester. And that's those people I start tapping to like, hey, how would you like to facilitate a program? And then what are you passionate about? So once they start kind of facilitating a book club or community of practice or something like that, or a workshop on something they're passionate about, that then draws other people from across campus to them, and they start forming groups. And kind of, I feel like our role in faculty development is kind of help them take that momentum to the next step. So some of those groups, probably not most of them, but there have been a few that then grew into research projects or scholarship of teaching and learning projects where they wanted to do something in their classroom. AI is an example. We had a faculty member who just got lit on fire with AI, and they've now since been doing kind of these small little studies, nothing like major, massive meta-analysis, but just small little things they're doing in their class around AI. They've connected with other people across in other departments, other colleges on our campus around AI. That has now grown into an actual committee on our campus now as they've developed their competency and expertise as kind of the people who are focusing on AI. So it can grow from some small little flicker of a flame to something that becomes institutionalized. And I feel like that's kind of what a part of our role as faculty developers are, is to try to identify those flames and try to continue to stoke the fire and provide them with the fuel that they need to continue to grow and expand across our campus.
Thanks, Eric. And this might be for you, Mark. There is a question, would it be possible to elaborate on the campus-wide rubric that was designed?
Yeah, we have, as I'm sure you do if you're on a campus, institutional assessment or institutional research office who focuses on assessments and if programs are meeting the needs and if the university is meeting their mission. So we had the director of that and the faculty who were the ones with the spark that really wanted to get the fire going on campus around transformative learning. The burrito buddies, they were called. So they would meet once a month over burritos at lunch, just chatting about what a university could be, what could higher ed be if it focused on transformative learning. And that's what happened before 2006 that led to transformative learning in our mission. So it was that institutional effectiveness, institutional research that works with outcomes and assessments, along with some of those faculty who had been caught on fire around transformative learning, and input from across campus that helped put that together. We used as the basis the AACNU, the American Association of Colleges and Universities, AACNU. They had created a bunch of value rubrics, validated assessment of learning in undergraduate education, VALUE. So we used that as a basis to then say, okay, for leadership, one of our core tenets, are there any value rubrics that already inform what those should be? So we had between 6 and 24 individual learning outcomes that underlied each of those tenets: leadership, service learning, research. And by looking at all of those individual learning outcomes and the value rubrics, we used that to create this campus-wide rubric, focused not on the skill development necessarily, but on the transformative learning, on the perspective and worldview and identity shifts as what we were looking for from our rubric. And I will point out, I can't remember the name of the module, Stuart, but the Transformative Educator program, there's quite a few modules and sections on assessing transformative learning, where you get to go into some more detail about that.
Great, thanks, Mark. And then there is another question. It says, what types of costs are we looking at per faculty member? I know we couldn't escape this one. It always comes down to that. So that's a great question, and it's something that we always like to take offline because we understand, budgetary limitations across the board, and we're really willing to work with you. So it really depends what you have for budget. Do you have grants available, et cetera? And we can work with you on that. We can also provide some resources into maybe how UCO was able to get grants across the board as well. I'm sure they'd be happy to share their experiences. But yes, definitely cost question. Email me directly at bzirlin@Caspir, so BZIRLIN @QASPIR.com, and I'll certainly be able to work with with you, kind of understand how many faculty members, what cohort you'd like to enter, and we can really work on a plan to implement this on your campus. So we'll definitely get to that. And so that is roughly about the time we have today. And we have, once again, answered all of our questions. Great. Thanks so much. Once again, we'd really appreciate all of your time and energy that you've spent with us today, and also all of our panelists, Dr. Mark Wolverd at UCO, Dr. Eric Kyle at UCO, Dr. Jord Walche, Stuart, and myself. Certainly appreciate it. Once again, this was recorded. This will be sent out to you.